Good morning to you, Caoimhe. How are you getting on?
Morning. Good, thanks.
So, what happened last night?
God, well, I don't know. It's a difficult one with Liverpool. You know, they come off the back of a great few days in London. They get that win over Tottenham, which, you know, seems to rally everyone, the fan base. Obviously, the injury to Joel Matip has knocked them a little bit, but they didn't find that out until after, you know, what was really quite an exciting deadline day, probably the most exciting in a decade since the Torres and Suarez and Andy Carroll, all that went on. So, you know, the club's been in a good place the past few days. Obviously, with the win over West Ham as well, everyone's still reeling off Salah's second goal, which was just superb. And, you know, it felt like Liverpool kicked into gear again. And, you know, they were sort of crawling the way back up the table, getting closer to Manchester City. And then they've just seemed to throw it away again with another lacklustre performance. There's not really a massive explanation for it. I mean, you can look for... There's obviously problems. There's still a lot of missing players. Obviously, I think Liverpool really missed Sadio Mane last night. I think they just struggled. Brighton were the better team. You know, Brighton were pressing just consistently and constantly, and Liverpool didn't really have any ideas, and that was sort of what was happening, you know, pre-Tottenham and pre-West Ham. They just seemed to not know sort of what direction to take, like lacking ideas. You know, I thought Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, they were trying to sort of do something on the wings, but there wasn't enough space. No one was coming out to join them. And just, yeah, kind of just not the performance Liverpool fans would have been looking for. I mean, the one star of the show is obviously Kelleher, who, you know, kept Liverpool in it even after the goal, with some sublime saves. I think he's, you know, the one highlight Liverpool fans are taking away from the game.
Is there any chance that it was somehow a complacency, that everybody had already started to think about Manchester City at the weekend? Because I know in all the conversations that we had after the two games against Spurs and West Ham, it was like, ooh, this City game is going to be great. Now, they just need to beat Brighton. And nobody really thought about the possibility that it would be anything other than, if it was going to be a win, it was going to be a scratchy 1-0, fair enough. But we've seen Liverpool do that so much over the last couple of seasons. Is there any way that might have seeped into the players and the management?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, a lot of us were like, oh, how big this Man City game is now. And I still do think it is really big. You know, it'll define Liverpool's season. If they win it, then okay, you know, there's still 15 games to go after that. And, you know, crazier things can happen. But if they lose, then you kind of then worrying about, you know, top four, and that becomes Liverpool's reality. It probably already is Liverpool's reality, but maybe we don't want to accept that just yet. And I just think, you know, I think if you look at the team last night, it kind of explains the performance in a way. I mean, James Milner has played back-to-back games, you know, as much as he's, you know, 35-year-old who just won't stop running for you. You know, he took a knock in the first half, and he did look a little bit leggy throughout the game. I don't know, maybe you do what you done against West Ham for Klopp and bring Curtis Jones on sooner, bring that little bit of energy and, you know, the cheekiness what he brings to the pitch. But it just seemed even the subs failed to make an impact. Divock Origi, I can't really remember him doing anything with the ball. Oxlade-Chamberlain was trying, but he just seemed to, you know, kept losing the ball. And, you know, fair play to Brighton, they were just there like a blockade and surrounding the ball. He was swarming everywhere. It felt like there was 20 of them on the pitch at times. And Liverpool just looked, I don't know, lacking in energy and lacking in confidence, which is bizarre because, as I've mentioned, those two games were massive for that, and they boosted the whole fan base. The team would have been feeling good going into it. But then, you know, that result happens and it feels like we're kind of back to square one again in terms of, you know, the desperate results over the sort of Christmas period and at the start of the new year. So it's an interesting one. But as I say, if you look at the team, you've got Nat Phillips in the back, and I do feel really sorry for him because it was kind of his failure to clear the ball that, you know, cost the goal. But, you know, I feel like we are missing three senior centre-halves for the season now. You know, it's been confirmed that Van Dijk was the latest, that he probably won't make it back for this season. And I think, you know, it's hard to overlook that and the effect it's had on the team. You know, Jordan Henderson playing in defence, although he's been, doing a great job, as has Fabinho when he's been there. Those players are missing from the midfield, and I think that just has an effect on the whole team. And obviously Alisson being out would have been a blow before the match, would have put a little bit of, maybe a little seed of doubt in the back of the minds of maybe Nat Phillips playing alongside Gallagher, who he has played alongside before for the under-23s, but just their lack of experience together. But I mean, he didn't show it, did they, either one of them? I thought, they were stand-up professionals, as they have been when called upon this season. But it just feels like, as much as you can use excuses, there's just a lot going wrong off the pitch for Liverpool, and that's having an effect on the pitch.
You mentioned transfer deadline day and a couple of signings that Liverpool managed to get over the line. Is there not a frustration within the supporters that those signings weren't made earlier, or that any defensive signings weren't made a bit earlier in the window?
Yeah, I think fans have every right to feel, like annoyed by it, because, Liverpool should have, probably as soon as Van Dijk and Gomez, should have always been looking to bring someone in anyway. We know Joel Matip's injury record isn't great, and, that's been proven now. He's out for the rest of the season. I think that was the one thing that sort of made Liverpool move in the market more than anything. I think, going into the season, Klopp was happy to sort of, allow Lovren to go and keep Fabinho in that sort of fourth choice if he needed him. But Fabinho's now become first choice, which is, the oddest thing, and no one could have foreseen that. But yeah, I don't know, deadline day felt like an exciting time for everyone. Liverpool were finally doing something after a month of saying anything wasn't going to happen. So obviously they brought in Ben Davies from Preston, which, I think that infused the fan base a little bit. It felt like just a Cinderella story, didn't it, really? But obviously, he's got to play football for Liverpool as well. It's, he's not just been given a ticket to ride. He's got to start playing this season at some point, and so's Ozan Kabak. You think, to get the midfielders back into midfield, maybe Klopp just has to try them out together. They were both at Anfield last night, and it does feel like the two exciting players for the future, as well as for, the next few months of the season now. Kabak in particular, that deal is crazy when you think of, Liverpool getting him on, could get him for 18 million in the end after his loan, which feels like a real steal for someone who's just 20. A Turkish international, has Champions League experience, has a few seasons in the Bundesliga. To have that experience at that age and be someone who, a lot of people have been talking about for a long time, you think that is a good steal from Michael Edwards.
And yes, you look at what they've actually produced defensively over the last month or so. Like, they've conceded fewer goals in the last 7 games than they did against Aston Villa on one night, with Virgil van Dijk playing on that night against Aston Villa. Are we looking into this a little bit too much, Caoimhe, that because of the fact that the high-profile names are missing from this Liverpool defence, it almost must be the reason why they're failing? But actually, when you look at it in black and white, it's not a terrible defensive record.
No, it's not, but I do think, the impact is there anyway. Liverpool, I don't know, if Van Dijk was missing from any team, you'd notice it, because when he's there, you notice him more than any other player, Same goes for Joe Gomez as well. I think that structure from the defence missing, it breaks down that spine of the team, doesn't it? And, Van Dijk isn't just a good defender, he's a good attacker of the ball. Set pieces, he always poses a threat. Dinking those balls over the top of, the opposition's high line has always been a source of joy for him. And, I think just sort of the energy and the confidence and the swagger he kind of brings to Liverpool's defence, that's missing. And Joe Gomez brings that as well. Matip just brought a professionalism, which Liverpool will now be missing. So, yeah, people can say, all these injuries are, just excuses for how Liverpool's season's going, but I don't think any other team would have got this far without losing that many players throughout the course of the season. There's been, spells when Alisson was out. Obviously, he was out last night. Fabinho, obviously Jota, who's the new signing, exciting, been scoring goals, and then he's out for another. I think it's another couple of weeks away. Klopp said from seeing him again in a Liverpool shirt, and when the defenders that sort of injury crisis happened, it felt like Liverpool were going to have to score goals, like what we were all saying. You know, they're going to have to just outscore teams, like a throwback to the 2013-14 season. And they started to do that, but then, you know, I think just it was too much on the attack and they just seemed to lose direction. And, you know, I think these things can happen. It's a weird season. There's no fans. You know, Liverpool, I think, are missing out on that more than anything. The Anfield record's gone. They've lost back-to-back games at Anfield for the first time, I think, since 2012. That just wouldn't happen with fans in there. It's a weird season, and I think it's, you know, going to be up and down and topsy-turvy for the rest of the campaign. Obviously, the Man City game now is massive. We know that. But then I think there's 15 games to play after that, and we know anything can happen. So Liverpool have just got to dust themselves down now and focus on the weekend and beyond, because you know the games come thick and fast. You know, they've got Leicester, Everton, the Champions League gets back up and running. And, you know, Manchester City have got a difficult run. They perceive, you know, they're absolutely flying, but they've got Liverpool, I think Arsenal and Tottenham on the horizon as well. So, you know, it's going to be a long old campaign and a long 90 minutes at the weekend, I'm sure. But, you know, if Liverpool can get the pendulum swinging back in their direction, then, you know, who's saying that they can't pull off a miracle?
What needs to happen for Liverpool to see the best from Thiago over the next little while?
I think he was much improved in his performances. I think his performances have been great if you look at him anyway. You know, he's brought an impact, but obviously in playing further back defensively, I think doesn't sort of help. You know, he's the pre-assist king. He sets up the pass before the pass. So I think, you know, with Wijnaldum having played sort of deeper, that's helped him. But Wijnaldum struggled last night, and it just felt like, you know, the triangle that worked against West Ham didn't really come off, and Liverpool seemed to just, I don't know, lose the enthusiasm that they brought to both of those games. I think, you know, getting Henderson back into the midfield and Fabinho would just be so helpful to Thiago's game, to provide that screen and, you know, not have the worry of having to tackle everyone, because he just seems like he thinks he needs to tackle everyone. And, you know, Liverpool are giving a lot of fouls away, which was slowing up the play and breaking up the game last night for Brighton, which, you know, I'm sure Brighton were made up with. But I think, you know, to really free Thiago into the player we know he is, and we've seen glimpses of, you know, you do feel like someone like Fabinho needs to be there and be that shield for him to go on and wander and provide those brilliant passes that you don't expect.
Last one for me. What's the approach then for the Manchester City game? Like, how gung-ho can this team be? How do they suddenly come out full of confidence and all guns blazing, while at the same time feeling that there's like that concern about the defence? It's a tricky enough psychological approach to the game to get right.
Yeah, I think in recent seasons, this game has always been a standalone anyway. I think, you know, similar to playing Everton or Manchester United for Liverpool, it seems to have become a game that doesn't really matter if Liverpool have lost the last 5 going into it. They're always going to bring some kind of heat to the game. I think same for Manchester City. You know, Liverpool have held a little something over them in recent bouts, and I feel like, you know, maybe they can just do something magical at the weekend, and that's what they'll be hoping to do. It's a difficult one because you're kind of thinking, you know, you want the defenders in as quick as possible, but can you drop Ben Davies or Ozan Kabak into this massive game? You know, maybe Klopp will, just because, you know, he's had that many centre-back partnerships this season. I mean, I've lost count now, so it's probably one of them. Just, you know, if they're training this week and they look good, get them in at the weekend. I think that's the key with Liverpool, just freeing up that midfield, and then obviously to have Sadio Mane back would be a real bonus. But I think they've got to. I think City presents a real opportunity for Liverpool to just play the way that they play best, because City are going to attack, and that'll leave spaces, vice versa, you know. So I think Liverpool struggle most, and we saw it last night against Brighton. The teams who are happy to, you know, get everyone behind the ball. I know Brighton pressed really well as well, but I think, you know, Manchester City won't do that. They'll be pushing forward, and I think, you know, it's going to be a really entertaining game for the neutral, but, you know, Liverpool fans might be watching through the hands, I think.
We could be sitting here in a week's time, Caoimhe, saying Liverpool are right back in the title race. There is a very realistic scenario, though, where, as you say, they'll have to settle for a top 4 place. What do they have to do over the next couple of months, planning for the summer, to ensure that at the start of the next season, they are ready to go toe-to-toe properly with Manchester City again, or potentially go and distance themselves from the league like they did last year?
I don't think there's much really to do in the transfer market. I wouldn't think with, you know, the couple of lads haven't been brought in, and we'll see sort of, you know, what goes on with Kabak's loan. You'd think that he's definitely got to become a Liverpool player after that ends. It's just about getting those defenders fit, get Van Dijk, Gomez, Matip, get them back fit, healthy, maybe just a reset of the mentality. You know, a nice summer holiday for the squad, I'm sure, would help, wouldn't it, if we can all travel again. I think, you know, nothing's lost yet, although 7 points is a big thing. And, you know, if Man City win at the weekend, 10 points just makes it, I mean, with that game in hand, it makes it almost impossible, doesn't it, to catch them. But, you know, you take 3 points off them, and you put that maybe little, give them the baton of doubt, which is sort of Liverpool have held on and off throughout the season. I don't think, you know, Klopp will be looking to do too much maybe in the transfer market in the summer. I think it's more about just, you know, regaining that confidence. And I think, you know, players coming back will do that for Liverpool. And, you know, it has just been a crazy season. If we can get fans back as well, I think that would help all of us, wouldn't it?
100%. Caoimhe, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you.
Caoimhe O'Neill there from The Athletic joining us this morning to reflect on Liverpool's 1-0 defeat last night